To know yourself and others, you must first sacrifice the illusion that you already do. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to have a plan, a strategy. Get out of my way so I can get this done. If you give me the reins, I will help you get it done. Neuroplasticity doesn't happen easily. It's not easy to reprogram the brain. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. Why would I only take it once when if I took it again in 5 years, in 10 years, it should tell me new things about myself? Why? Because I've evolved. Okay. I've grown and learned. True. But you're not a brand new, shiny, new human.
Welcome back to the 5 Minute Career Hack Podcast, and we're here for part 2 with Kenyatta Turner. Welcome back to the show, Kenyatta. We're so excited to do this part. I've been anxious myself because we're doing this live, but welcome back to the show. How are you?
Oh my gosh, Jamila, thank you so much for having me. I am happy to be here. I'm so excited for
Yes,
you to
yes.
discover, uncover, and unleash your
Oh,
behavioral
come on
superpowers.
now. Come on. That's exactly what we're going to do. I took the behavioral superpowers assessment
Mhm.
just yesterday. I did read through my results,
Good.
but you guys are gonna get walked through the exact experience I mean, a modified version because we're doing it in about 25 minutes.
Mhm.
But you're gonna get walked through what it's like to uncover these results and be able to do something with them afterwards. So tell us, Kenyatta, about the behavioral superpower assessment that I just took.
The assessment that I gave you is hard science. It's
Mm,
validated, okay? Scientifically validated in 125 countries and 11 different languages. 3.5 million people have taken this exercise that I've given you and was developed over 30 years ago. Why is all that important? Well, to some of you, it's not important at all. Because some of you don't care about facts and figures and research and data like that. You're like, show me the money, or you're like, show me a picture. Right. So, but I say that for those of you who do want to know that, and especially if you've taken other psychometric assessments, you may have some thoughts about them, about their accuracy of them, the validity of them, the sustainability of them. Like, what is it really measuring? Why do I need to know this? I already know myself. So, the first thing I'll tell you and everyone else listening, to know yourself and others, you must first sacrifice the illusion that you already do. Okay. I'll repeat. To know yourself and others, you must first sacrifice the illusion that you already do. I need you to wipe your mind clean as we go into this, right? Have a growth mindset, okay, versus a fixed mindset.
She's talking to me right now because she's looking at my face. She's talking directly to me in this moment. Growth,
Talking to
Jamila.
everybody,
Growth. Growth. I
right?
love it.
So that's important. But also know that this exercise, Jamila, you only have to take it one time. That one time you took it, you'll never need to take it again. So
Hmm.
some of you are listening going, what? Why? Why would I only take it once when if I took it again in 5 years, in 10 years, it should tell me new things about myself? Why? Because I've evolved.
Mhm.
Okay. I've grown and learned. True. But you're not a brand new, shiny new human. Just because you've learned a thing and read a book and watched a podcast or listened to a podcast, even this one, doesn't mean you are brand new. It just means you have now learned some things that you may or may not apply, okay, to who you already are. All right. So that's important to know is that one time we got you on lock. Okay. And not only do we have you on lock, we have you on lock at a rate of 97.1% accuracy. 97.1%. Jamila, what we're about to cover. That's you.
Mm.
So those of you listening and you, Jamila, might also wonder, well, whoa, wait a minute. 97.1. Okay, first off, that's very detailed number here, right? And that pretty much means almost 100%. So
Right.
how are you able to predict with that much accuracy who I am and who I will be 10 years from now? Well, it's because again, who you are doesn't really change. We
Mm.
measure that. We measure not who you want to be, Jamila. Okay.
Right.
Not who you thought you were. It's who you actually are. And now learned behavior really is in the 2.9%. It's because you may learn even through this conversation. There's certain things that you are naturally wired to do and a way you naturally would show up that you may find in the conversation you have directly after me with someone else. You'll be like, oh, dang,
There it
I
is.
probably would have said that to them, but now I'm going to flex in the moment because I realize that that thing I normally would have done probably isn't going to help me, probably isn't going to help them. And
Right.
now I'm making a conscious, intentional choice to go into the 2.9% because you learned, because maybe the last time you did that, it bit you in the butt. Okay. So you realize, so it doesn't change your desire to do it, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
just choose not to. Okay. So
Consciously.
consciously,
Yeah.
that is a key component of what we're about to talk about. It's not changing you, it's just telling you what your behavioral baseline is, what that scorecard is for your personal development. And only then do you decide to make a difference in some sort of way. And I will tell you, good luck. And here's why, is that this doesn't change easily.
Right.
Okay. That's why there's coaches, and that's why there's, that's why we have to read the same book over and over again. That's why we have to, we have to practice, and we have to, we start and we fall off, and it's hard. Neuroplasticity doesn't happen easily. It's not easy to reprogram the brain. It's not impossible, but it's not easy either. So,
Mm.
but you need to know where you're starting from, Jamila, and that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. So when you took that exercise, the data is 97.1% accurate. And it is what I'm going to do right now for you is called the mini SWOT, mini B SWOT. So everyone, when I'm going to say everyone, if you're unfamiliar with the term SWOT analysis, it means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It is an old school methodology that companies use to evaluate themselves as an organization or maybe a product. It's like, let's take a look at our organization and what are our strengths collectively, our weaknesses collectively, what opportunities are we missing out on that we could be taking advantage of, and what are the threats to our success. Well, people do them on companies and businesses all the time, but they don't do them on themselves. So that's what I do. I take the data from your report and I'm able to analyze it and tell you what your strengths, high level, because we're going to go high level right now,
Right.
your weaknesses, your
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, and your threats based on your behavioral insights. That is then the baseline that you can take to then go forward and create strategy to help get you where you want to go, if you know where you want to go. If you don't know where you want to go, then the data here usually kind of just points you.
Yeah.
It kind of
It
just says,
helps
this
you
is what you
uncover.
should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be doing this, and why aren't you doing that? Like,
Right.
so,
Love it.
so there's literally, that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so
Love that.
I had to set the framework, right, for
Thank you
those who
for
are
setting
listening,
the framework. That was
trying
beautiful.
to trying to understand what it is we're doing and why, how valid it is. Like, you'll hear me talk a lot about superpowers. You'll hear me talk about kryptonite. You may hear me talk about the Avengers. You may
Mm-hmm.
hear me talk about some sort of, imaginary character that has something to do with the superhero universe and world, because that's the analogy for what it is I believe we have. I'm going to share with you, Jamila, what your superpowers are underneath the surface that are always there, but I'll also make you aware of your kryptonite. And the kryptonite is the thing that I always say, a power overplayed can become a struggle, and a struggle unmanaged becomes a weakness. So we want you to be aware of those things, right? So they don't catch you off guard. And so you can check yourself before you wreck
Right.
yourself.
All right, so I'm ready. I'm excited. I've got a growth mindset. I got my growth mindset cap on and I'm ready to do this. And part of the reason I wanted to do this was because so many of my clients come to me either frustrated, ready for change, just not quite sure what, like, I don't know, Jamila is a lot of what comes out. And I
Hmm.
felt like this would be a great exercise for me to do live so that they can see how it works and then ultimately decide if it's something they want to do. So
Absolutely.
tell me about Jamila Brown.
All right, Jamila Brown. I want to first tell you, you're very brave to
Thank
do
you.
this. So I commend you for being vulnerable in this way, and let me tell your business, which I'm about to do. But that's a lot of ownership. It really
Yeah.
is. So those of you listening, like, mad respect for her to say, "Hey, you can just do
Thank
this
you.
live with me, and I trust you trust me to do it. So thank you,
Yes, I
right?
do.
And the audience, obviously, you trust them to hear it.
Yes.
So, and this is really cool. So you took the exercise, took about 10 minutes, and
Yes.
you got a behavioral superpowers report, and I've built your SWOT analysis from that. So I will tell you that there's a couple things that we measure. One is there's 10 behavioral identities, I call them. Okay.
Okay.
Everyone falls into one of the 10, and yours is called an initiator. Mine is called an influencer. Okay. We're right next to each other on the wheel. If you think of a wheel and there's 10 going around, you and I are right next to each other. Okay. At the top on the left hand side. And so, an initiator, what does that mean? Well, first off, no two initiators are alike. Okay. You are all sitting. I like to say at the initiator table, but you're in
Mm.
different chairs. Okay. Because, and I'm at the influencer table. My table's not your table, but again, there's different chairs at the influencer table. It's because we measure like 4,200 data points. So there's no
Mm.
two alike. There's 4 trillion different combinations. And as an initiator, though, we know at a high level, you guys are like the spark. Okay.
Mm.
You're the spark. You will come in and initiate. You know what the word means?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
So you are come in, you're going to initiate. You like to set the tone. You like to take charge. You like to be the boss. You don't like
Yeah.
being told what to do. You don't like to deal with the details most of the time. You want to come in and like get it going and then bounce and go get something else going. Okay. So you're usually not in there for the long haul when it comes to that. Doesn't mean you won't be, but how you think is like, ooh, what
Next.
else is popping? You know what I mean? What's next? Okay. So that comes with great power because people love working with you because if you say you're going to do it, you're doing it.
Mm.
And they love that about you because some people don't know how to be the spark even for themselves, right? So if you're listening to this and you're like, God, I wish I could be like that. I wish you stop wishing. If you're not an initiator, that doesn't
It's
mean you
not what you
don't
want.
initiate. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't mean we don't all initiate though,
Right.
right? But we don't initiate like an initiator initiates. Okay. So as an example, I'm an influencer. That's my title. It's what it's called. It has nothing to do with social media. Girl, I got like 2 followers. So, hey, you guys are listening out there. If you want to follow me and be
Go
number
ahead,
3,
please.
help me out. Okay. So it's not about that, but it's about how I do what I do. But that doesn't mean you don't have influence. You influence like
Mhm.
an initiator would.
Okay, makes
Okay.
sense.
I initiate like an influencer would. Okay. So this initiator, some of the things that you want to think about. Let me look at my old thing here. Make sure I'm taking my notes. Yeah.
Yep.
I already talked about bold, aggressive action, right? You want to create the rules. They're typically very goal driven, realistic, not usually easily distracted because they got a thing to get done before they can bounce to the next thing. So they want to finish that thing just so they can bounce. Very confident, risk taking, right? Visionary thinkers. And your communication superpowers as an initiator really are very direct, very action oriented, facts, big picture, action plans, relationship dynamic out the gate. Typically, initiators are very reserved, they appear distant and withdrawn. People people don't always know how come you're not always at the party like them. Okay? They're like, "Yeah, we don't know if Jamila's coming
Well, wow.
because she
That
don't want to
doesn't
hang
sound like
out
my
with all of
friends.
us." You know, I mean, so
I
they're
hope
like,
y'all are watching. I love y'all.
and if she is there, she's clock watching, going, okay, I know this party is over at whatever, because you're not necessarily outgoing,
Yeah,
right? Initiators oftentimes are just more reserved. They're visionary, but they don't need everyone to be. They don't need to be in the mix. That's not their
right,
thing. That's my thing. That's not their
right,
thing.
right.
Okay, so that is could be a kryptonite in moments where you may not recognize that, Jamila, and you may not because you're not going to recognize you're even doing it because it's who you
It's
are.
natural.
It's natural, but the key is to what do the kids say these days? Read the room.
Right.
So if you read the room, then you'll have a better understanding of who's cool with that reserved side of you and who may need more from you.
Mm.
Okay, because and I'll say a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. So if you got to flex into the 2.9% of you for certain people at certain times, then do it. Because it's not about you. It's
Right.
about you might need to make a connection in that moment. And you may be coming off a little standoffish,
Yep.
but that's not your intent, but that's how you're coming off. Right. So, but that's a natural thing. Right. So that's kind of high level when it comes to that initiator. They're all kind of like that. Right. But then there's things about you specifically as an initiator that make it the type of initiator you are. And this is where we're really going to get into those strengths and then the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, because they're specific to you as the type of initiator that you are. So we talked a little bit about being bold and have taking initiative. That is a strength, right? You're gonna set ambitious goals. You're gonna make impactful decisions. Those are strengths. Visionary thinking and strategic insight. That's a strength for you. You see the big picture. You'll drive it home. Being realistic and practical. That's definitely a benefit and a strength, especially to someone like me who's not realistic or practical. I'm not those things at all. So that's your special power, okay?
Right.
That you just see it that way, right? And think about this podcast for a moment, right? The impact on the career, this podcast that you have right now, your boldness, your visionary thinking, like that positions you as a thought leader in this space, and you're not afraid to do it. You know how to leverage strategic insight to navigate, help other people navigate career moves with confidence in a way that they may never see because you see it because you're an initiator anyway, so you see it. You may be dealing with a client who's a community builder, let's say, as an example. That's one of the 10. You may be dealing with a reflective thinker. That's another of the 10. There's one called an engager. You won't see even through their own career, or they won't see through their own career the way you will see through their career,
Mm.
because you already have that you see everything that way. You see a way to initiate, come up with a plan, and get it done. Now, that could be frustrating for people who do not want to initiate or be pulled along on your crazy train.
Yeah.
Okay. They're like, I'm not going there.
Team too much.
Team too much. And you may not be able to understand why they're not going.
Right.
This is the key. This is where the data is so important. This is why I teach people not only how to read their own report, but how to read other people's reports, because, or read the other data, because you need to recognize that in that particular client to be like, oh no, they're not like you. Okay. They're not like me right now. And I cannot approach them like I naturally would, because I could
Right.
scare them off.
Right.
It's a strong style you have.
Yep.
Okay. It's right next to mine. I know that. Okay.
Yep.
And we could be a lot. We could be a lot
Yep.
for certain people. So something
Yeah,
to
I call
consider.
it pushing people over the cliff. That's it's real, and that's the terminology I came up with. You said it so much better than I do, but that's
Yeah,
the
but what you said
terminology.
is that, but that's
It's
pretty much accurate.
exactly
That's
what it
pretty much
feels
what you'll
like.
do.
Yep.
Ooh,
Yep.
you'll just put your foot right in their back.
Yep. And clean over the cliff.
Clean up the cliff. Because for your mind, that's the way to get it done.
Yeah.
You're like, you have to jump over that thing. You know what I mean? And they're
Right.
like, no, not doing it. So
I'm
that
not
I want to,
dying.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Now, here's where it comes important to your personal brand, because that decisive nature to influence and lead, like you need to be telling people, yeah, I'm an initiator. You know what I mean? So they know what to expect from you. I'm the spark. I'm going to come in. I'm going to set it down. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to have a plan, a strategy. Get out of my way so I can get this done. If you give me the reins, I will help you get it done.
Right.
And that, because some people need to hear that from you. Now, here's the thing: if you never said that, they'd figure that out in like 20 minutes.
Right.
But I believe in behavioral branding, and I believe in
Yeah.
just saying that up front, because the people who need that will gravitate towards you. The people who need their handheld, and the people who need to be enabled and coddled, I'm going to say, and those of you listening to me right now, you
It's
know exactly
okay.
who you are,
Yeah, and it's okay.
and it's okay. But don't call me and don't call her. Okay. Now, here's the thing: it's not to say we couldn't or won't.
Right.
Why? Because we're good at what we do, and we're coaches. We help people. We know how to give them what they need. The important thing for you to realize is, though, about and why I say don't call us, is because we have to flex into giving you that, because we aren't wired for that. But
Right.
it doesn't mean we can't or won't. Just know where we're coming from. That's all I want people to know and understand. Know who you're hiring. Know what you can expect from them. And then you can decide if it's a dovetail situation or if it's a repellent situation.
Mhm.
But don't get it twisted. Don't come to me being like, why is Kenyatta talking all fast and moving her hands? Well, you already saw that in me. And if that's too much for you, then no, this is what you're still going to get. And are you prepared for that? That's all we want you to know about Jamila, right? This is who she is. Doesn't mean she can't flex. But the important thing, and you need to think about yourself as well. How hard do you need to flex all the
Right.
time? You can only do. Where's my rubber band? I have a little example I'll show you, kind of from my hair tie. You know, you think of a rubber band, you can stretch it And what happens? You let go, it goes right back to the shape it was.
Right.
Okay.
Instantly.
And you can stretch it real long and far. And then what happens? It breaks. Here's one
Right.
right here. Look at this. I'll show you a visual for the visuals.
Right. That would be me.
Rubber band. Okay. This is Jamila. She's like this. And then she does something that's not like she normally does it. So she goes like this. And
Yep.
then she goes like this. And then she stretches. This is as far as she can go. I could go farther, but you know what happened? Break.
Break.
Okay. We don't want that. But after she's done with this, let's say for 2 hours of whatever, goes right back to this. Okay. And so that's what happens. We all can flex, but for how long and until what end? Okay. So does that make sense, Jamila?
Yes, it absolutely does.
Okay. So so those are your strengths in that way, right? Like I mentioned, how what you do affects the podcast and how you help people is very specific. And uh how you currently leverage those strengths in your career and podcast. And let me ask you a question before I move on to the weaknesses. Of the strengths that I just mentioned, which one resonates with you the most, and
Ooh.
which one do you feel able to have the greatest impact with when you use that strength?
Based upon the feedback that I've been given personally and professionally, I would probably say the one that needs the most work is understanding what someone may need from me, not
Mm,
just all the time, but in that moment, being able to read the room, like in that moment. Cause I'm also a problem solver, right? So
yeah,
you
yeah.
call, most people are gonna, my loved ones, friends, they're gonna call me, hey, I got this going
Mhm.
on. I'm ready to solve, but you may need me to listen,
Yes,
right?
that's key. That's
Yeah.
awareness right there. That's aware. People like you and I have a challenge sometimes with just listening.
Yes.
It's because we're solving the problem in our head.
Like like that hard
Some
drive, right? That we were turning off.
we're just
It's
always,
running.
and sometimes people want us just to listen,
Right.
but they always come to us though.
Right.
Always, and they know we're gonna try to solve the
They
problem.
already know what I'm gonna do. I'm 46, 47 years in. They know what's coming.
They know exactly what's coming, but they still come asking,
Right. Right.
and then act like crazy when I'm like, "I can solve we can
Let's
fix
get
this,"
to it.
you know?
We gotta do it and we gone, right?
Because we're trying to figure out how to make it to where it's not a problem again.
Right. I want
We're
it to
like,
go
"Okay,
away for you.
yeah, we get that it's a problem, but how do we fix it to where we don't ever have to talk about this again?" And sometimes people just want to talk about it. And so
Right.
it's a challenge to come to people like you and I for that, because we then have to flex. Like we have to literally clench our teeth together, go like this.
Like listen twice as much
I'm,
as you
I'm
talk.
listening. You know what I mean? I'm not saying a word. And then they're looking at us like, well, don't you have nothing to say?
Right.
Are you
You sure? You
you
sure?
sure? Because I got 100 things
Like
to say.
like I'm looking like this is me on the phone. Like I'm like, "Are you sure?" It's
This
my
is
life.
truth. This
Yeah.
is truth. So listeners, some of you listening resonate exactly with Jamila and I and what we're saying and how we're saying it, because you're probably like us. But the others who are listening, and if you hear us laughing about it, you're probably thinking, God, I just want to talk. And I don't,
Sensitive.
and yeah, and we don't mean, there's no malice
No.
in that at all. It's just how we're wired.
Right.
So the idea is to give grace to the person who is different than you. Don't be mad at me that I want to solve your problem when you came to me with a problem. I'm sorry. I can't help it.
Right.
Okay. I'm trying to help it, but no,
I'm
it's just,
trying, right.
you know what I mean? We're trying. So just everyone give each other some grace in the moment, right? So it's about the acknowledgement
Mhm.
and acceptance and love, right?
Yes.
But you have to love yourself first. So Jamila, I want you to love that part about you. The
Yes.
strengths are the things I want you to love. I want you to love all of it. But the strengths, I want you to sharpen them like a knife, because some people need exactly that from you, and they will find you, as much as you let it be known that that's what who you are and what you're going to get. Okay. Now,
Absolutely.
weaknesses. Let's jump into weaknesses. Now, uh, again, thinking in terms of an initiator. We talked about maybe appearing withdrawn or distant. That can
Yes.
happen, especially when you're hyper focused on something. Okay. So if you got the head down and you're working, you don't want to be bothered. That could be a weakness if someone feels like they can't approach you. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, you might sacrifice work-life balance. Now, I had to say there is no such thing as work-life balance. I call
Right.
I call it intentional imbalance.
Right.
because balance
When
means
pick and
nothing's
choose.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, pick and choose. Sometimes you got to spend more time on this or that. You have to be careful though, because you're so intense.
Yes.
So you could burn out. Burn
Yep.
out. You know
Been
what I
there,
mean?
been there, done that.
And you don't want to do that. There's something that's analogy that I use: speedboat versus cruise ship. You're a speedboat all day, skipping across the water, water splashing everybody's face, people flying out the back. You know, you're just you guys, you and the cruise ship going the exact same place,
But I
and
got to be
you're like, I'm gonna beat you.
right.
Now the cruise ship is like, yo,
We're gonna get
yo,
there. Like,
we're gonna get there, and of course you're gonna beat me because I'm a cruise ship and I can't move like you move. And you're like, it don't matter, I'm still beating you. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, that
The
sounds about
cruise ship,
right.
the cruise ship is like, look, Jamil, this is like a one-handed clap. I'm not even playing that game with you. You know, not even playing. We're stopping at ports. We're gonna go shopping.
We're
Okay.
gonna
And
relax.
yeah, and you're like, you see that hill over there? We're gonna take it. You see that next hill? We're gonna take that one too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's who you are. And people want to be around that kind of energy. They want to just soak it up, you know. But if you're not careful, you will burn out. You'll neglect your personal well-being. A myriad of things can happen. Okay. So another weakness could be drained by excessive interaction. Like you and I've been talking probably longer than you even want to be talking. You know what I'm saying? But it's your job because you got a podcast. You got to
Right.
listen up.
Got to do these interviews.
But after this, you're probably going to need to take a nap.
Ooh,
Especially after hanging out with someone like me, because I'm a lot. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's such a good man. That's so good. So that's all I'm gonna say, audience. That is
Yes.
so good.
So you know this, okay? And so you prefer like the structured, purposeful interactions over just social engagement for giggles. You know, you're like, is that necessary? I'm like, I'm saying yes. All the things are necessary. And you're like, Kenyatta, what is the point?
Why are we doing this?
What are we going to get out of this? You know, and I'm like, drinks. Yeah, that's what
Right.
we're getting. You're
That's
like,
the
yeah, but
win.
you're like, and then what? I'm like, more drinks. Yeah,
It's the
whatever.
real turn up is right here. Like, what are you talking about?
And you're like, where's the plan? Where's the action? Where's the money? You know, that kind of thing. So I'm like, all right, all right, all right. So the challenges could be, you know, just simply thinking about that, you know, knowing that you may appear unapproachable and indirect or overly directive because you can at times, sometimes some may have said at your point or at your life at some point that you're bossy.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if anyone's ever said that to you, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had. I just look at the data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
People with data that looks like yours, sometimes they tell me, yeah, people always say I'm bossy. Well, you are
Yeah.
because you're an
Right.
initiator.
Right.
You're trying
It
to
is
get it
what it
done.
is. Yeah.
It's what it is, right? So that piece is important, right? You know, creating a balanced communication for you professionally, where you already mentioned that listening piece, right? Becoming more proficient at that to navigate leadership, team dynamics, right? Those are the things that could become weaknesses for you if you're not careful. And then create strategies that help you be productive without compromising your personal well being. Okay, that speedboat does need to take its foot off the gas every once in a while. We'll run out of gas. You know, you got
Right.
to conserve the gas, right? Um, so of the struggles that I mentioned before we jump into the opportunities and threats, tell me which of those struggles resonated the most for you?
And I'm over here taking notes because I'm an avid note taker for everyone
Mhm,
listening. When I look down, that's just even though I've got the recording, it's gonna yeah, I'm
mhm,
taking notes. That's just me. I would probably say the thing that resonates is that people enjoy that energy, right?
mm,
Even though they don't fully know what they're signing up for all the time, they like that energy.
mhm.
And I don't mean that in a cocky or conceited way, but I
No,
can I feel that. But then they don't also know, they gotta receive and welcome what comes with Jamila, if that makes sense,
yeah,
at
it
the same
does,
time.
it does. They oftentimes want the energy, but may be confused when it doesn't turn off.
Mhm.
You know, like
Mm.
they don't understand why it's always that way, I guess, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Um, and it's like that with many other superpower. Everyone who has a superpower, that's probably what happens. People want that thing from them, but they don't get it why they can't just turn it on and off like a
You're like
switch.
a switch. I'm not a
Yeah,
switch.
It's not a switch, so it's challenging to
Yeah.
flex, to stretch the rubber band. It's hard to do that, right? So that's a key component. I'm glad you mentioned that because again, people
Yeah.
do want it, but they don't always want it all the time.
Right.
And here's the thing also that happens is that people take our behavioral tendencies and styles, they take it personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
They think that you're being that way only with them. And when they want you to stop, they're like, "Why do you always do that? Can't you just do that? If you love me, then you wouldn't do that. If you care, they got all these things, all these reasons why you should be different, and they
Right.
all chalk up to them."
Right.
What I mean? It's
They're like the
ridiculous.
center. They're the
The
sun.
center. If you love me, you would stop being a speedboat and you
Mhm.
come be a cruise ship with me. Because whoever that person is in your life may be a cruise ship. And they're like, "Why? Can you just slow down?" And you're like, "No, speed up."
Right.
And they're like, "Well, if you should just slow down for me." Mm-mm. Maybe every so often. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
'Cause I
Like,
love you.
because you love you and you're
Yeah.
flexing, you're trying. But they should recognize that how difficult that is for you and acknowledge that you are working hard, to give them what they need in the moment.
Yeah.
And so that's important recognition. So
I've learned in my career after coaching and mentoring thousands of people, it's better to clearly understand who you are and the type of work that you want to do in your career. Circle back next Monday to see Kenyatta wrap up this incredibly accurate feedback session with me and find out how you can learn more about who you are and the best direction for your career. Go ahead, I know you want to. Hit that subscribe button and be sure to turn on those notifications so you get the alert when the episode drops. See you next week.